What's up, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. I wanted to say a few things before I dive into the video, as I always do. First and foremost being, I have no idea what the status is for Hallan Week this year. I've had a lot of people DM me and email me asking me if I will still be participating in my Hallan Week that I've done since the very beginning of my channel, but I just am not sure. I am still not in my workspace yet. There are still a few things I'm having to figure out with soundproofing and lighting, things like that. And also my daughter has to have unexpected surgery, so I'm kind of rolling with the punches 2020 is still giving me, and I'm hoping to at the very least get a few extra videos out for you that week, but I might not be able to do the full 7. But we will see, and it always makes me excited that you guys are still so excited for things like Hallan Week, and Hallan Week every single year always gives me this extra boost when it comes to being creative on my channel and trying new things and getting interesting content out there. Now, before I dive into today's case, which is an absolutely heartbreaking one, I need to say a huge thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. NordVPN, I will be forever in debt to and grateful for after I experienced my own breach in internet security. And for those of you that aren't aware of what NordVPN is, it is a virtual private network that, in a nutshell, protects your identity and all of your personal information while you are browsing online, whether that's from your phone or your laptop, potentially even on your television, from the comfort of your own home, or in a coffee shop, the airport, a hotel, you name it. I feel like we often naively think that all of our private information is safe if it's on our personal devices, but unfortunately, that's not always the case, you guys. Oftentimes we keep important private information like passwords, bank information, social security number, all sorts of things on these different devices, and hackers have very sneaky ways of gaining access to that information if we are not proactive about our security. NordVPN is incredibly easy to use. There's a Chrome browser extension. There's even an app that I have on my cell phone, and with a few clicks and a very uncomplicated process, you are able to secure all of your personal information, and also you can have up to 6 simultaneous connections, meaning all of your devices are secure. NordVPN has no data logging, which I know is a huge thing for a lot of people, and they also have double data encryption and 24/7 customer service. All of your personal data stays in your hands, and all issues are resolved very quickly. Right now, NordVPN is offering my subscribers 68% off of their services, making it only $371 per month, plus you get 1 month for free. And all you have to do is go to www.nordvpn.com/Danielle and use code Danielle at checkout. A huge thank you again to NordVPN, and now on to today's video. So today we're going to be speaking about the disappearance of 3-year-old Aaron Cody Stepp. And a lot of you guys have suggested this story, and the second I dove into it, I completely understood why. He disappeared from Columbus, Ohio in 1997, so this is a bit of an older case. But the reason I really wanted to go ahead and cover it now is because his birthday was just this past Thursday, and he's right around my age. He would have turned 27 the other day, and there's a huge chance that he could potentially be out there, could be celebrating. People's memories are being triggered around this time. I always try to get information out around these time periods because you never know who might see something and a memory might pop up, and authorities get some bit of information that is beneficial to them. This case is so upsetting, in my opinion, because it's so dang obvious. I almost just used another word. It is so dang obvious what more than likely happened, and it's one of those where you're just screaming internally because you want authorities to act, you want there to be an arrest, but there's just, everyone's hands are tied because there is no evidence whatsoever. So Aaron went by his middle name of Cody, which is how I will refer to him for the rest of the video, and honestly, I don't really know that much about him. He was with family for only 3 years, and there is a huge chance that he was actually only with family for a lot less than that, and he was definitely with his mother for a lot less than that because of quite a few different events throughout the course of his life. Cody's mother, Robin Stepp, struggled. I'm not sure if it was before his birth as well, but I know right after his birth, she struggled with drug addiction. She was very deep into sex work and putting herself in sort of compromising situations from what I am understanding. And because of this, at around 4 months old, Cody went to live with his aunt, who was Robin's sister, Mickey Stepp. And at the time, Mickey lived with their mother, Janice Stepp. So all three individuals, Janice, Mickey, and Cody, were living at 214 Hossack Street in Columbus, Ohio, and I don't believe at this time there was any sort of legal agreement. I think it was just one of those situations where there was just a child and someone needed to take care of him. And so while there was no legal agreement, he was simply in the physical, understood custody of Mickey Stepp. But by December of 1996, Mickey was appointed as the temporary legal guardian of Cody because of some trouble that his mother ended up getting into. Sometime around 1996, Robin ended up being slapped with 2 different theft charges that landed her 17 months in the local jail. So obviously, since Cody was super young and he can't take care of himself, and then his mother, who was his only parent that was there at the time, was incarcerated, the task ended up being fully entrusted to Mickey. And unfortunately, somewhere along the way, over the 17 months that Robin was in jail, something went very, very wrong. On March 11th, 1997, 911 received a phone call shortly after 7 p.m. from Mickey and Janice Stepp. They both said that Cody had vanished from the neighbor's backyard and they couldn't find him. Obviously, he was only 3 years old. It was March. It was still very, very cold in this area at the time, and it was dark outside, so they really wanted to act as fast as they could. And when authorities arrived, every single thing from start to finish was suspicious, to say the least. Authorities went to ask the 2 women how Cody vanished, what exactly happened, just the general idea that they had in the story, but both of them ended up having contradicting stories. Mickey said that she had gone with Janice right next door. So they lived at 214 Hossack Street, and the house next door was 220 Hossack Street. I thought, based on information that I saw, that it was across the street, but looking at Google Maps, it's like this random small little section of houses on a block across from a bunch of other different businesses and buildings. But the house next door is where they went, and Mickey claimed that Cody went as well, but he immediately went to the backyard of the home to play outside. She said at some point she decided to head to the gas station down the street. She was heading off on foot because she wanted to buy some potato chips, and when she got back, Cody was gone. Now, I'm not sure exactly where the nearest gas station was when this happened in 1997, but I know that on Google Maps today, the closest gas station is about a 13-minute walk one way. So it would have been probably around 30 minutes before Mickey was back. And she claimed again that this was sometime around 7 p.m. She said that she had left Cody in the care of Janice, that Janice, his grandmother, was the one that was watching him. But when authorities spoke to Janice, she said the exact opposite. Janice said that she thought when Mickey left for the gas station that she had taken Cody with her. I don't know if this was just a miscommunication or maybe she saw Cody walk off and to follow after Mickey. I'm unsure exactly, but she said because of this, she was not watching him. So after a few minutes of staying at this neighbor's house after Mickey left for the gas station, she went ahead and went back home, supposedly leaving Cody in the back of this neighbor's house entirely unattended. So authorities were already a little bit concerned because it seemed to be a bunch of finger pointing from both sides so far, and they couldn't really get a good understanding exactly of what was going on. So they decided to just move on and ask both of the women what Cody was wearing that night. They told police that he was wearing a lightweight, I believe, red waffle knit type of shirt, blue sweatpants, and black and white high-top shoes. But he wasn't wearing a jacket, and authorities also thought this was strange because they claimed that he was playing out back and had been playing outside most of the day, but it was also only 28 degrees outside that day. And first of all, for any of you guys that have children, kids complain about being cold or they complain about being hot. Like, the most mild temperatures usually irritate the absolute crap out of a child. They're very intolerant to things like that. So it wasn't very believable that Cody would have willingly been outside in freezing cold weather, temperatures below freezing, without a jacket, wearing just a long sleeve shirt. But while all of that information is a little bit questionable, once authorities walked inside of the Stepp home, that's where red flags really started popping up all over the place. They noticed that there was absolutely no sign of Cody within the home. And I'm not talking about like they went around and searched to see if he was hiding anywhere. I'm talking, it's like Cody never lived there. There wasn't a room for him, a bed for him. There weren't toys scattered around the home like you'd expect with a 3-year-old. There weren't little shoes tossed, everywhere that he possibly could have pulled them off, or socks. There weren't clothes for him. There was absolutely nothing at all. Because of how strange this was, and in an attempt to see if anyone maybe saw Cody walk off, or did they see an adult come and take him out of the backyard, they decided to start questioning around the neighborhood. They went door to door and were asking questions to these different neighbors. And not a single one of the neighbors remembered seeing Cody. But not just that day, they hadn't seen him in the past 6 months to upwards of a year. This threw everyone for a loop because also from what I'm understanding, it's not too strange if neighbors don't see children for a while. I mean, it's definitely kind of weird, but some things maybe could affect that and cause that. Conflicting schedules easily being one, but Cody was supposedly in the neighbor's backyard. But from what I'm understanding, even that neighbor said that they had not seen him in 6 months to a year. And if it was common for Mickey and Janice to go over to the neighbor's house, no one else would have been there to watch Cody all the different times they had done it. So authorities began to wonder if Cody had actually been missing for much, much longer than both of these women were saying. They then went to different family members to see what family members had to say, and unfortunately, they simply echoed the exact same things that all of the neighbors did. None of the family members had seen Cody in an entire year, and they also said the timing of this disappearance was a little bit suspicious and bizarre because Cody's mom was set to be released from jail the day after his disappearance, and they knew her, and they knew the first thing that she would have done would have been show up to her mom's house to see her son. And all of a sudden, the day before she comes home, this little boy that no one had seen in a year goes missing under very bizarre circumstances. There was absolutely something going on here. They also decided to speak to Robin, and Robin said that she hadn't seen him for a very long time. Obviously, I think it was even way past before she ended up being put in jail. And on top of that, she said once she was in jail and was making phone calls to the home to speak to her mother, speak to her sister, and speak to her son, neither Janice or Mickey would allow Cody on the phone. And while she thought this was suspicious, I'm sure she just assumed they were punishing her for, ending up in jail. Maybe didn't want to harm Cody by speaking to his mom but not being able to see her. He was really young. He probably wouldn't have understood. But along with all of the other information, friends began to come forward saying that they frequented Janice and Mickey's home as well, and that what authorities saw in the home in March, the lack of evidence that Cody lived there, is something that they had noticed months and months beforehand. There is evidence that he did have toys, obviously. He did have clothes. There are very few pictures of him online, and honestly, it seems like they kind of stop between 1 and 2 years old, but he's in like a little bouncing seat walker type of toy. There's another picture where he's holding a toy in his hand. So he had toys, he had all these things, but why hadn't anyone seen them or seen him for months prior to his disappearance? Multiple searches came up empty-handed, and authorities never ended up finding a shred of evidence at all, leading them to what might have happened to this 3-year-old little boy. And I don't know what surveillance was like at the time in this area, but there were a lot of churches nearby. There were a lot of different large businesses, metal scrap yards, places that likely would have had some sort of CCTV or something. I don't know if they checked this, but I'm assuming if they had, they never saw him walk off anywhere. And it was a decently busy area, you guys. There's train tracks right there. There were a lot of different houses. So if he had walked off around that time at night, I find it very hard to believe that not a single person saw him, and being so young, stopped to get him or, something. So that led authorities to believe the only other possibility was the fact that he was physically taken from this yard by someone, but it was kind of hard to focus on that when they had all of this other strange information in regards to where he was living and his family and the family friends. 4 months later, there was a possible sighting, and it occurred in, I believe it's pronounced Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. A woman reported seeing a child matching Cody's appearance with 2 adult women and 2 other children at a restaurant called De Fleury's. Again, horrible with pronunciations. But this was a restaurant in Pennsylvania, and I tried to look up where it is now, and I do not believe it's open any longer. But regardless, I have not seen any sort of description for the 2 children Cody was seen with, but I have seen a very kind of vague description of the women. So one of the women was a Caucasian woman. She was between 30 and 40 years old, around 130 pounds, and she had, I believe, just like medium length, medium colored hair, like probably like a brown, is what I would assume by the description of medium colored hair. There was also an Asian woman, and she was apparently around her 20s, and she had very dark, very short hair and thick, dark framed glasses. Unfortunately, the authorities did try to figure out who these individuals were. I'm sure they were in contact with the restaurant. I'm sure they put out some plea to the public in the area. But unfortunately, these individuals were never identified, so this sighting also was never able to be confirmed. After about 15 to 17 months passing and no evidence, unearthing itself, Robin decided that she wanted to legally declare her son dead. Hired a PI named Larry Proper during this time period, and while authorities really wouldn't say what they believed happened, the information that Larry found, he said, led him to believe that Cody was no longer alive. They ended up developing a theory, and the theory was that Janice and Mickey ended up getting rid of Cody shortly after Robin was put into jail. While it seems like most of the time Mickey was watching and taking care of Cody since he was only a few months old, she was not receiving any sort of government assistance for this because I don't think there was any legal agreement. But now that there was some sort of legal agreement, she was being given, I think it was $279 in welfare. I don't know if that was weekly or monthly, but she was receiving this assistance in order to help pay for the different expenses that came along with taking care of Cody. Her idea was that Robin believed that her own sister and mother wanted to just be able to pocket this money without having to take care of Cody, so they disposed of him in some way. Robin said that they did have family and they did originate from West Virginia, and she wondered if maybe they took him back to West Virginia, placed him with family, distant family, or potentially a family friend. I don't know if family is as likely, just because I think authorities would have been able to track something like that down. I know that Mickey did appear on the stand during all of this, and I'm not sure if Janice ever did. I don't know if they really had much of a reason. I know that she kind of fought a little bit about this. She refused to take a polygraph test. Mickey did take 2, but she did fail them, and at this point they were both being very uncooperative, so I have no clue if Janice showed up there. But Mickey did say that there was no way on earth she was involved in Cody's disappearance, and this whole idea that she got rid of him for the $279 was ridiculous. Robin told the judge that her whole reasoning behind wanting to declare Cody as deceased was because she believed he had been missing for a lot longer than the day before she was released from jail, and that there was pretty much little hope that he was alive or that they were going to find him at this point, because she believed it had been such a long time since he had actually disappeared, and it was likely under way different circumstances than what both Mickey and Janice were saying. And to top it off, they managed to dig up a little bit more information showing that Mickey may have tried to impersonate Cody, just furthering the idea that they were well aware Cody had been gone for a lot longer and they were trying to cover it up. So when children are put under the temporary custody of someone, like in a foster situation or, this sort of agreement, there's typically, financial assistance involved. And when it is, the government usually has like requirements and then certain things that they have to do, such as sometimes there's a caseworker that comes and checks on the child once a month or maybe once a week. Sometimes it's just bare minimum of, you need to provide us with the fact that, this child's been attending school, this child's been going to the doctor and getting their vaccinations, things like that. And a nurse named Clara Sellers from the Columbus Health Department remembered Mickey bringing in a young boy, and this was in February of 1997, so around a month prior to Cody's disappearance. Now, while that could potentially prove that Cody did in fact stay in the home up until around at least that point, Clara believed that this child was not actually Cody. So she specifically remembered giving this young boy 3 different shots while he came into the doctor. But she also remembered later on encountering another little boy that was eerily similar in appearance to this young boy that she remembered being Cody. But this boy was with another woman. I am not sure the exact details of what happened. I'm not sure if this happened at the Columbus Health Department where she worked, or if maybe she just, had remembered this young boy from someone that was a family friend. I have no clue how it went down. It was alarming enough for Clara to believe that Mickey had brought in someone else's child to try to impersonate Cody and prove that she had brought some child in that she wanted everyone to believe was Cody for vaccination, so the government wouldn't take any further steps on making sure that Cody was all right in her care. Clara ended up testifying as well that she was about 75 to 80% sure of this, and they even found the little boy that she believed took Cody's place that day. This little boy was the son of a woman named Rebecca Hunt, and Rebecca Hunt was close friends with none other than Mickey Stepp. Rebecca was brought in to testify, and she confirmed and admitted that she allowed her son to go and stay with Mickey one night around the time frame the nurse claims Cody came in for these vaccinations. However, she also said that she never gave any permission for Mickey to take her son to the doctor, and all of this was in a court document, which in my opinion sounds like she believes it was highly possible that Mickey did in fact do this. But one thing it also proves is that this woman, who claimed to be close friends with Mickey, close enough to allow her son over to her home and likely had been in Mickey's home multiple times, had also never seen Cody, because again, I'm sure she was asked the question, did you see Cody within this home? And since authorities said they couldn't find a single person that had seen him in the past year, that means Cody wasn't there when she dropped her own son off. The judge ultimately denied declaring Cody as deceased because of a few different factors. Usually someone has to have been missing for around 5 years before something like this would even be considered. Declaring death is a huge deal. I feel like a lot of people just see it as families wanting closure. They need to just, have it said and done so that they can kind of heal and go on with their life. But it's a lot more complicated than that, because that person that you're declaring dead, just because they're missing doesn't mean they're not out there somewhere. And it is a whole process to fix a situation that's like that, you guys. It's way more complicated than it kind of might seem from the surface. So on top of the 5 years, there is also a need for serious evidence pointing to foul play or the individual meeting with a serious accident that would have been fatal. For instance, blood being left behind indicating a fatal wound, or a portion of remains being found, clothing. With Cody, there quite literally was not a single thing, so the judge did not feel comfortable ruling his death. After this, authorities stated that they did believe foul play was involved, but that they also didn't think there was anything at all pointing towards the fact that he had been killed. So I guess this was the best ruling that there possibly could be, because they felt there was a large enough chance that he could be out there alive that they did not feel comfortable changing it to a homicide investigation. Several other searches were held, including digs and locations that they believed Cody's body could have been buried, and the most recent that I have seen occurred in 2008. Columbus police officers took cadaver dogs to a location off of Parsons Avenue and Hosack. It's kind of like right at the end of Hosack Street, and I don't know if a tip led them to this location or if they simply checked because the area was easily accessible. I've looked on Google Maps again. I've said that 100 times in this video, but I know as of right now there is a very large recycling center that is right across the street from this. There is a huge mechanic shop, a metal scrap yard, and behind all of that, it looks like a factory, but there's also nothing on it labeling it on Google Maps, so I don't know if it's just a part of this scrap yard and mechanic shop. But lots of potential places to hide a body in this location. There's again railroad tracks nearby, but after 4 hours of digging and using the cadaver dogs, they were not able to find anything, so they called off the search. Authorities have said that most years around the anniversary of Cody's disappearance, they do receive an influx in tips, and they do follow them all up because they genuinely want to be able to have answers for Robin, but every tip they have looked into has not led them to any further evidence or answers. And unfortunately, in the early 2000s, so literally just years after all of this happened, both Mickey and Janice passed away. taking any answers they may have had with them. And both of them, up until death, maintained their innocence, that they had absolutely nothing to do with Cody's disappearance. But I do know that in 2016, Robin did speak out. I have not seen her say anything since then, but as of that moment, she stated that she still believed her mother and sister were involved in whatever happened to Cody. Now, obviously, the largest theory in this case is that Mickey and Janice were involved. That seems to be the consensus across all internet forums, everything that I've seen, comment sections, even Cody's mother. And also one of Robin and Mickey's siblings stood trial as well and revealed a lot of very scary things about Janice in particular. According to one of her own children, stated that she abused all of her children very badly. I don't know if Robin has ever confirmed this at all. In 1964, Janice lost a 2-year-old daughter of hers named Cody Stepp, and the death certificate said that the cause of death was bronchitis, but it was also noted that this child came in with multiple burns all over her body. And there never ended up being an investigation into this, but according to even this child's own sibling, Janice was very abusive and really bad towards her children. Something like this, they really wouldn't put it past her being involved in. Now, to me, it seems that this whole alleged vanishing from the backyard was just a last-minute impromptu way to explain why Cody was no longer there with them when Robin showed up the next day. I mean, either that or it's one hell of a coincidence. Like, a seriously strange coincidence. Obviously, we don't know what happened. I think it's possible they did get rid of him for money, since it's been brought up that money could have been a motivator, and if that's the case, it makes me worry that they possibly sold him. So I'm really curious as to if there was any sort of change in their financials around this time. Did their bank accounts, either of them, show any influx in money? Did they have extra cash? Did people witness that? Did they buy a new car? Were there any large purchases they wouldn't otherwise have made? Or maybe there was some sort of accident. Maybe they were just being negligent when it came to taking care of Cody. Something happened and they weren't quite sure how to cover it up. So they just kind of got rid of it and scrambled last minute to figure out how they were going to explain it. So they used the most a typical scenario where, we left him in the backyard to play and he ran away or was taken. It's like something happened to him or they did something to him and then they tried to erase every bit of Cody from the home afterwards. Now, obviously, some people still believe that there is a chance that he really did disappear that day. Maybe it was a mistake, like we spoke about earlier, where one genuinely believed the other was watching him and he either wandered off or was taken. However, he was 3 years old. If he wandered off, he was also next door, and at that age, I'm sure he knew where his home was. I'm sure he would have known to go back there, and if he had wandered off otherwise, again, he was 3 years old, and I feel like someone probably would have seen him in that area. But in the case of him wandering off, to me, again, it would just have to be the most crazy set of coincidences, for some reason his clothes not being there, his items not being in the home, and then, there's a miscommunication in a neighbor's yard, and then he wanders off, and then the first person that sees him just so happens to be someone with bad intentions. If Cody is, in fact, out there alive and well somewhere, he was somewhere between the ages of 2 and 3 when he disappeared. And unfortunately, that means that he more than likely has no clue who he actually is, anything about his past. He's not going to remember anything. So he could be out there living a great life. So maybe one day genealogy or DNA will eventually, or his own curiosity will eventually show that he is out there and he is all right. But the general consensus, again, is that they did something to him or there was an accident that was covered up. The whole thing, honestly, just makes me sick to my stomach because he was just a little boy. This tiny, innocent boy that relied on an adult to care for him and love him and protect him. I honestly wonder, if the court even really looked into Mickey and made sure that this was a safe home for Cody during this time period. It just really can take you down a rabbit hole, and I'm heartbroken for Robin and I'm heartbroken for Cody most out of anyone. So let me know what you guys think down below. And also, if Cody is somehow out there, I want you to leave a happy belated birthday to him as well down below, and a few kind and encouraging words for Robin and the authorities if they were ever to come across this video. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and go, you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, as always, to listen to Cody's story. Please remember to share the story across the board. I do have a link down below where you can download and print his missing persons flyer. I know that they have most recently done a age progression photo too. But thank you guys again so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to become a part of the Hallan fam so that hopefully we can bring them home together, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.